Chad, would you please bring up the budget worksheet? That's the one. And you guys each have one in front of you as well on your desks. I wanted to just go through some of the changes. Some you see, some you don't, so I'll talk about those. This is the same format of the worksheet we have put before you. This worksheet reflects an 8% increase. You can see down underneath the total tax levy column over 8% increase over your 2021 certified levy. And I'm just going to run through some of the changes. Today I looking back, for my own need to be organized, I kind of looked back at some of the changes that we've made, and it's really significant how many times we have been through this budget. And every time you see something a little bit differently, and it ignites new discussions. But what we have done on this before you is some changes in the general fund. First, there's a project the police department has, kind of let's call it an ADA security project at their facility to do some ADA compliance, electrifying some doors, some security cameras. The change in the police department budget reflects the security camera portion of that ADA security project being phased in over half in 2022 and half in 2023. That reflects a $6,100 reduction in the police department budget. The next change you will see is in the fire department's budget, and that was a $10,000 decrease, and that is related to the water rescue craft. That has been deferred to the 2023 CIP. We do have other options, if you will, for that, and feel like at this point that was something that we could shift to that next year's budget to consider without prohibiting us from providing any services or any safety. There's an additional change on the general fund line at the top, and that is to the reserves. The chart you saw before reflected a $250,000 planned pull from reserve. We did adjust that by $40,000 to $290,000. That helps relieve some of those levied dollars a little bit in our general fund. Next, I want to talk about under wastewater on the operations line. Now, I want to state first, this is not one of your levied funds, but I do want to talk through this a little bit. We were notified that as an MPCA audit requirement, we do need to do some riprap repair. The engineer's estimate was about $30,000, and so those expenditures have increased by $30,000, as well as our planned pull from reserve from your prior chart that you saw. So again, not a levied fund, but wanted to bring that to your attention. And then I mentioned we did some changes that you don't actually see, and that's in our community development budget. Let me get to my notes here. The bottom line remains unchanged from the dollar amount that you saw last time, but in working with our new director to realign the economic development, community development, and the housing needs, and balancing that between the CHEDA and the city budget, we did reclassify some of the dollars throughout that budget. We did bring before you a request for an accounting review of some of the CHEDA budgets, pools of money, processes, if you will. One of the things we're trying to work through right now is, one, alleviating some of the burden on the current CHEDA staff, and also pulling some more of those accounting or bookkeeping activities, especially as they're related to the economic and the community development piece, into the city. So we've made some adjustments there to hopefully bring some of that in, alleviate some of the burden right now on one CHEDA staff member. There's a plan for a second, and allow us to utilize some of our city staff over here with some additional resources. So again, that bottom line remains unchanged. Just shifted some things around in there to try to accomplish some of that. One, it will provide Robert some support on getting that bookkeeping and accounting and working through that. Ryan is working with him on some of those issues and working through payroll and stuff like that, but felt like some changes were needed. I knew that may be possible. I did my very best to create a budget without knowing exactly what we were going to see, and now that we have someone hired, I would really like to have his input and be able to allow him to move forward in the way he feels he can be most successful with, both at the city and the CHEDA budget. I don't have any other changes to go through on this, but I would stand for any questions that you guys have before we move on to our next slide, if there are any.
How close are you to having the actuals for this year available?
I have the actuals. What I don't have for you yet is we need to make some adjustments that have to come before you on the transfers. And I actually contemplated and discussed with some people today that I could have printed that for you, but I can't give you the complete picture. I know you wanted to know where we ended the end of the year. Did we have to have, what was our reserve balances? And that's the part I can't show you that until we come before you with some transfers. All of them are written. We are nailing down and trying to identify what caused that deficit in the airport fund. And because it is compiled over multiple years, it is taking a little bit of time. I could print something for you, but as I said before, I hesitate to do that. What we hand you in a public meeting does become a public document, and I don't want to contribute to any confusion to you or our public.
That's what the problem is. I mean, I'm getting a lot of heat from the public about, well, we can do a budget without having the actuals from last year to pre-plan for another year.
Well, your staff does have the budget in front of them. We certainly are looking at our current year-to-date. If I give you a draft version of our end-of-year 2020, I know that there are still some entries that we need to bring before you for approval. I don't want to add confusion to that and show you reserve amounts and dollar amounts and an end-of-year balance that is going to change after we put those transfers before you. I just don't know how helpful that will be. Staff is not throwing a dart at the wall and hoping for the best. That is not how you plan a budget. That is not how we have planned this budget.
So as far as going into 2022 now, we should be able to have January's numbers in February.
Yes,
And go from that, so we have actuals pretty up to date every month.
Yes, I've explained on multiple occasions that internally, we are already producing those as soon as our water's billed, our accounts are reconciled, and our reports are done. Internally, we are already on target to provide those reports for you in your second council packet. That remains unchanged from what I have explained to you before. That is on target. I want to make sure I am putting before you accurate numbers. That our actuals, our year-to-date activities are not inaccurate. I need to be able to show you where we ended 2020 after we can present to you our requested changes and some transfers. Some of those are going to require general fund transfers. I have a list of those things so I can keep an eye on what that may hit our general fund reserve, but I can't show you that on a report yet because those transfers will have to come before you for approval.
Like I said, I just want to make sure we start with 2022, because I mean, that's the whole part of budgeting, is having actuals. What are we spending? Where are we going? I know you guys probably know that, but it is taxpayer money, and they should have the right to know where their money's going up to date. That's one of the things, that's our job as a council, how we're gonna spend their money, is, we gotta know what we have to spend, like what's available and what they actually use. And I mean, that's part of, just doing a budget period. I mean, that's very important information. And like I said, I've got a lot of concerned people out there that are, how can you do a budget like this without, not that I don't trust you that you're not doing the right thing, but I'm just saying, we need to make sure in 2022 that we have something that's available to the public immediately after we approve bills. And we should have a month up to date. I mean, we're kind of getting through a mess here, but once we get in that, I'd like to be able to say that, the general public will have access to where we are as a city, a month later, because that's the way we should be able to operate that. And
It'll be part of the packet that we put on our website, that we email out to a number of people, and that we post the link to our Facebook page. So anything you are handed in a public meeting is a public document. And since I've started, we have made our packets available to the public on our website, on our Facebook page, or to anyone that may come in and ask for it. So that will be produced as part of your packet. Yeah. Are there any other questions about this particular budget worksheet before?
Well, like now, let's say this money that we are getting from the government, you talk about your wastewater and stuff here. Can't we use some of that to cover some of these costs that you have in there, and then use the funds that we already have, transfer them to other funds?
Okay, I think we have talked about this before. Let me make sure that use put in some ARPA funds into the wastewater and transfer wastewater reserves to another.
Yeah, 'cause isn't that kind of an enterprise fund too, that, it gets built up, and, I mean, if you're using the money that you're getting for what you can use it for, then can't you use this money for something else? What you have in your reserve there?
What do we have in reserve there?
Well, like say what you have in the wastewater.
We have not, well, until the ARPA projects are approved, and we have some monies plugged in, what we tried to not do was put dollars in that would be ongoing operations, because once that's gone, we won't have that back. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I'm just trying to say that, you're saying you got this at 8%. It's been a tough year for a lot of businesses, a lot of homeowners and the whole works. The lower that we can get this, and if we can use these federal dollars that we're getting for other things, we should try and knock this down as far as we can go
I agree with her, though. If you do that, Tom, it's a one-time fix with that money.
Yeah.
You're trying to fix it, then when you go back,
You're still doing that project that you were doing.
but if you're doing a project, that's one thing, but if you're trying to go through everyday expenses, you're talking wages and you're talking, the insurance is not, that's quite a big chunk of what this budget is. And we need to, I hate to say it, we need to go up 8%, or it looks like it, because next year, if you don't do that, you're gonna be looking at 10% to get back to, you got it, we've had a couple of years here where you kept it pretty lean, but now you're paying the fiddler, so.
But maybe in a year, you might have some business that you're getting taxes from now that you don't have again. It's not easy out there.
And on that same note, the city has experienced some of the increases that our businesses have also. Our fuel, our materials are up. We are having trouble, like many people in some of our departments, attracting candidates, which there's a lot of things. Our interest income is down significantly. We talked about that early on. I'm sorry, I don't have that with me, but I just read recently that there's concerns about natural gas prices, those things. I want to be conservative and put the most realistic budget before you possible. In the past, and most of you have said to me, you are seeing more complete or more informative presentations than you've seen on the budget in the past. And that is in fact part of, I think, what some of the issue was. We talked about, let's talk about the legal budget line for a second. What you were seeing was a flat budget year over year over year. What you were not seeing was that budget was being exceeded every single year. That means we were spending more than what you saw, so we were artificially keeping our levy low. And you wouldn't do that at your home. You wouldn't go buy a Ferrari when you can buy a Honda Civic in the hopes that next year you're getting a promotion. If we will be as lean as we can this year. We are already trying to do that. We are facing some issues even this year, and again, I don't have all the information to bring forward to you, but some repairs on some of our facilities. And it's not things you can defer or should defer. I don't want to artificially bring this down for you when in fact the money is going to need to be spent. If we run lean this year, we will be putting money into reserves. I do want to look, as we're doing our transfers, we want to be looking at should we and what can we put per our funding policy into municipal land and building. In the 2022 calendar year, I would like to try to engage someone to do a facilities plan for us and walk through our facilities and help us understand the age of our HVAC systems, the condition and age of our roofs.
Well, yeah, and that's what we were talking about last time, that we should do that, and then we should bond for some of that stuff so that we don't have all these big expenses year after year on this.
Yes, but I don't have, until we do the evaluation, and that is what we plan to do. I'd like to see an immediate needs list, maybe a 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and then understand what can we do? Is this big enough to bond? Are there other projects to bring in with it? But we have to get that information first and that data to evaluate. And we don't know what that's gonna look like. I can tell you at one of our facilities, we walk in to take care of one thing and we spot 3 other things. And so there's just, I expect it's going to be a hefty list for us to address. I'd like to make sure all of our structure is sound and those types of things, and get someone in here to help us. We have one company engaged that is going to give us a quote for that, and we are gonna seek out a second and see what that would look like to work on. But I don't wanna artificially trim this down. And the other concern, and it's the same vein of transferring these reserves, we can boost reserves more, but that is really truly a one-time fix. And we have done that a little bit with general fund, and I have put that in my list of things that we know that our share of the MnDOT corridor study is planned to be pulled from a general fund reserves. And I do have a list of those things, so I can keep an eye on that. What we're trying to get away from is funding ongoing operating costs with one-time monies. We do have significant information technology infrastructure we are duct taped and Band-Aided right now and hoping and praying we can get to January 1. And our IT infrastructure is your police department, it's your body cams, it's your car cameras, it is our ability to take payments and push our website out. Chad has worked literal magic. There was one week that our internet was dropping 3 times in one morning, and that affects all of us. It affects all of us, and there's some significant increases, and we've talked about this in our IT budget to get us up to standard where we need to be. We're working hard to get those things corrected so that we can start leveling out a little bit. I want this to be realistic for you, and in my opinion, and in the opinion of my staff, an 8% increase is a realistic budget to put in front of you. We started at 12, what we put in front of you, and we came down to 10. This is showing you 8. And remember, your levy is only impacted by the 4 yellow funds. Library, there's really nothing to cut there. Not anything significant. Our Parks and Rec, our levy dollars are supporting our arena and our swimming pool and our other activities. General fund, you're supporting your police department, your fire, your emergency management, your public works has things in the general fund. Our legal expenses are in there, our building official, our new community development department, our finance department. I don't want to recommend to you that we continue to boost things with one-time dollars, and I don't want to present to you an artificially low budget. We will make every effort, even as we are doing in this 2021 budget and calendar year, to come in as lean as we can, and we will make those same efforts in 2022. Our hope in early 2022 is to be discussing and evaluating some of our rates. That means utility rates, that means our user fees. Are they set appropriately? Are they not? Are we covering costs? Are we not? And what gap is comfortable and reasonable? And some will be. We've talked a lot about our pool operations. It is a very long road, and I don't see that you could ever be a break-even operation on a municipal pool. But learning how we can adjust some things and how do we close that gap and do it safely and provide quality service while we're doing it, that's certainly an issue. So we have to be cognizant of what those dollars are paying for. And I hesitate to tell you that I think we could comfortably, in this next budget year, to address all of the issues that we've talked about in our budget meetings, continue to clamp down.
I still say we have to get it down to 7. I mean, you talk about fuel prices going up and this price is going up. Absolutely, it does for us and it does for everybody else too. The only difference is we can tax the other ones to pay for ours, they can't. There's a lot of people in this community on fixed incomes, what they get is what they get. I mean, we're the ones, we said, okay, we're gonna set your levy, your tax, or this or that, or whatever. We gotta try and keep it down there for this year. I mean, it's.
Well, the thing is, we keep cutting the different departments and different things like that, and we're ending up losing people and getting one or two people to, for hiring, and it's gonna end up to a point, like I believe Wayne said, is that it's gonna end up coming back in 2-3 years down the road and biting us, so we're gonna end up having to go with 10 or 12%.
At some point in time, we're gonna have to, like Wayne said, pay the piper, because it's gonna catch up to us.
Yep.
And
Well, it
last
already
year-
has.
I mean, I look
last
at the
year,
8 years I've
we
been
did
on
the
this
same
thing, it's
thing,
all the
and-
same. It's like, 5, 5, 5, 4, 5, whatever, and I get that, but, for me, I gotta be able to justify it without the numbers and the info and the backing. I mean, without having to come in and
Well-
sit with you and look at that, it's for due diligence for me to be able to say to the public, there's a reason, you gotta trust me that I'm doing an 8% levy, because I've seen the numbers, I've seen what we spent this year, and I haven't seen any of that, and that's my whole problem with not being able to, being comfortable with this budget at all, is not getting info that we never got for the last 3 years, like you said with the thing with the attorney fees, we should have caught that. Well, if we're overspending for the last, I've been on here for 7 years, I've never seen that. No one ever told me we're overspending attorney fees every single year.
I
And that's
am,
why I'm adamant on, I need to see the actuals, I need to see what we spent this year. And then I would, if it adjusts to 8%, I agree with 8%. But without that information, none of us should be able to say, yeah, I feel comfortable with that.
Steve, some of what you're gonna see in this year's budget is not what you're gonna see in next year's budget. Or-
I get that, but it's still
Well, you
the
have to keep,
principle.
but when you're justifying this budget, that includes different priorities that have not been addressed by staff, and then, in fact, by council, you're not going to be able to see in the 2020, 2021 budget, the IT infrastructure needs. You don't see that. I ask that you trust the staff that you have hired and appointed. If you would like to come see me, I will hand you a 2020 budget. I am going to write draft on it. I am going to write transfers incomplete, because if that gets into the hands of the public, I am also responsible for the information that goes out. And I want to make sure that if you make a copy of that or leave it on a table or hand it to one of your citizens that has these concerns about your approval of this budget, that they understand that it's not complete. That is not giving you, and I apologize for that. I don't like that either. It is not useful as your city administrator and the person that your charter names as being responsible for presenting a budget to you to be still dealing with 2020 entries. It's really not fair to me or your staff either. That did not make this process enjoyable, easy for me or for your staff members. This isn't a joke to us. We are not guessing. We are not hoping we have the right answer. We have been as conservative as we possibly can while still trying to be realistic. So I will present, if you'll come in and see me, I will have one in your box, but I'm going to make sure it is noted on
Yeah,
each
I mean,
page.
That's what each of us should do. Should all could come in there one at a time and look at that. I mean, that's all
I
I'm saying.
welcome you to, you haven't reached out to me yet to do that, so I'm
I've asked them
inviting
all
you.
to have that for the last
And I-
27 meetings.
Yes, and I have given you the reason why I hesitate to hand that out as a public document.
But is there a timeline that you think you'd feel comfortable with putting that out?
I would
Is it
have-
a month? Is it
I would
6
hope
months?
not that long. I really, truly, I have been pushing for it to have in my hand for months. Part of that is we did have some lag time that we had to wait on our auditors, and they do help write some of those.
Is it before we have to set this final budget?
I can make every effort for that. That is on December 13th is your, because we have to have it certified before your last December meeting. We will make every effort to do that. I would like to already have it. I'm trying to track on a spreadsheet what our impact to the general fund is going to be on committed dollars, even on this planned reserve pool. So this isn't an ideal situation for any of us to be operating in this
So-
manner.
Just a question, and you guys that have been on this council for a long time, has that happened, Steve, ever in the past, in your 7 years? Have we had what you're asking for?
We have, but evidently it wasn't actual, it wasn't.
So it was not,
Like
it
I said,
was,
the lawyer fees, I mean, when I look at that, because I look at it every month, we look at that, we get it. But at the end of the day, if that's not up to date, it doesn't tell you anything.
So I
either.
think
So, I
the
agree with her waiting to get it right, but I still wanna see where we are for the levy, actual levy at the end. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. And over the last years, it was probably false information, would you say? Cause
So it's-
nobody would
I
sit
don't
on
wanna
this
say-
council and say,
I
those
don't-
numbers, you know, are over by 30% every year for 5 years and agree to that. I mean, that's just asinine.
Right.
I don't think it was false information, because that certainly implies that there was
Okay,
some,
or up to date.
I think that there was a way that, the way things were presented to the council, and I dealt with this in my first few months here, when you were not getting helpful information. You were not getting information in a way that's helpful to you to look at and see where you were on the budgets. I saw what you used to get. It was, to me, it appeared to be random budgets. I didn't understand why you were getting the budgets you were getting when you were provided a monthly report. So I don't know the reason behind it. What I am telling you is it's not the way I plan to operate, but there are things that this staff, myself and the department heads and other staff members have been trying to work through, and it's not easy for us either to not be able, I would like to run a trial balance and see what my reserves are. But I have to now go to a spreadsheet because I don't have some entries made yet. And it's chaotic, it's uncomfortable. I would be happy, as always, to sit down with any one of you. Only a couple of you reach out to me with questions. I would be happy to do that. If I hand you a document that I know is not complete and is not what I believe is the best thing to put in the public hands, I'm gonna document that all over it. And then if you choose to hand that out, then that responsibility for explaining why it isn't and understanding it is on you. And I hope that you will do that very carefully and thoughtfully, if you choose to do that.
I would have no trouble sitting there and keep it in there, but like I said, you know, to do your due diligence, to do a budget, you need all the information. And I wanna see where we did last year, and to me, that's only being fiscally responsible. And you just said that, you would like to have that same position too, which is, okay, can we have it by December 13th before we have to approve this? I mean, I don't wanna, you know, if this is where we need to be at 8%, that's where we need to be. We have a lot of new things coming in there, bigger things, whatever. I understand that, but to be able to go to the public at the end of the day and say, this is why. You know, it's like, well, how come we weren't there last year? You know, where we were at last year? No, at no time this year did anybody on this council know what an up-to-date budget was, where they sat, how close they were to being on budget. And I know it's not your fault, I'm not saying it's any of your guys' fault as staff, but it's like, I feel bad as me being in that council seat for 6 years that we didn't catch that. We didn't get that information. And that's why my concern is going forward in 2022 that we can go to the general public and say, this is our budget, this is up to date, this is where we need to be. And if it costs money, it costs money, but I think that's what we as a council need to be honest to our constituents is this is the actual budget.
I agree. And the reports we will present will show you year-to-date actuals, budgeted amounts. The best that I can do for you is to commit to working towards that. I cannot go back and undo the things that have happened to get us where we are today. We are working diligently to get where we need to be.
Would it
So
be
is
fair
the-
to say you could have that report to us by the 1st of the month? And then, so the 13th, we would have a dozen days to look at it and ask questions if we had any questions?
We will make every effort to do that. I think right now we could present to you, I think, everything but the airport entry.
It can, but we are,
While he's walking up, the airport entry is the biggest amount that we need to look at for transferring from general fund reserves. So the others, while they're not insignificant, the airport transfer will be significant. And I want to make sure we're giving you the complete picture, which is
That
why we have
airport,
waited.
that's usually a project that
And that's,
they've just
it looks
completed.
like,
And usually they hook a couple of airports together and say, I don't have a project this year, use my money. Isn't that
I
where
think
that?
Ryan's done some
no,
investigation, I
it
don't.
is not quite like that. That's what we thought was going to be the result when we looked at it, but we went back to the 2 projects, then added that up, and that is not the dollar amount that we're off. We're still off over $100,000. And I'm trying to get it to a much closer number to see where did this go wrong every year. And the other entries, we worked with Tracy, our new auditor, Because every year Kim has given her recommendations to changes that should be done or accounted for that weren't done. So that's part of what we are now working with these entries to do. And Tracy and I have got them all ready to go except for the airport one. But when we do this, you have to close your system because these are affecting cash accounts so that nobody, like Ashley could be keying in an invoice, that then we're gonna be out of balance. So Brady Martz is going to be here tomorrow, the next day, finishing up our CARES Act audit, and that is on the agenda to talk about get these entries done. And the date to do these entries, if we go back to April 1st to do this entry, then every monthly report that we've done is incorrect and would have to all be redone. So we're trying to make it the most efficient way. And Amy and I have gone back many years and went through a lot of numbers trying to make sense and get an idea of history, spending, to kind of get where we are today.
Because it was always my impression that it was a lot with Hallock, and they didn't have a project, and they had $80,000 that they needed to draw down. We did a project and we needed that. We got it for this year, then next year, we didn't get ours, we gave it to them, you know, type of thing.
I'm not sure, I'd have to double check with our airport consultants, and that is true, that does happen. As a matter of fact, we don't have a project in
Weren't we giving up some money or something, or allocating something?
In 2022, I think we don't have an airport project, so that makes our 150 available to be loaned, if you will, to another airport. What I don't know, I will have to verify this, but I don't believe I don't believe that money comes to us.
I don't know.
I think it
that's-
stays there to be loaned and paid back, but I can verify that
But
to be
that's what I'm
sure.
saying, if you're short $100,000 from our projects, normally they wouldn't do these unless they had enough money squared away from this one and that one and pulled them together and.
Right.
And the city came up with the difference.
Yeah.
Budgeted that and we got it done and that about right, Tom?
That's right, I remember that we borrowed it from Hallock, and
Yeah.
when we didn't have them, we paid it back.
That is true, that does happen, and
Yeah.
we have done that with others. What I'm not sure, and I don't believe we actually sent that money, and I will verify that. But in our exploration, that doesn't appear to be what's causing our differences.
Is there software that you budgeted in your budget for the 22 that would help this? Or it's not really, one
If-
size fits all?
Well, if we are utilizing our financial software appropriately, and a lot of it is entries, we have to tell it what we want. So if it's a transfer, and if it was an airport project and it should have pulled from general fund reserves or whatever, it's up to us then to write that entry and tell it to move those dollars. And it appears that there are some entries that the auditors have asked or recommended to staff year over year to do that were not entered. And so some of those just compile a little bit, and just working backwards through some of that and untangling it so that we're not just saying, we need to make a $400,000 transfer, but so we can explain to you and so that we can understand how that happened and how to make sure it doesn't happen again, is
So-
kind of what we're working
So
on now.
Amy, just so we can all understand this, obviously you guys have come into a financial situation that you guys are trying to rectify. So going forward, that you're not having these issues and that there isn't the frustration of not having actuals or actually accurate actuals for that matter. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration, that this isn't going to be something that happens every year, but you are
Yes.
rectifying the financials right now, so we could have a healthy, appropriate financial process going forward.
Yes, when I came, we were consistently, sometimes 4 to 5 months behind on reconciling. We should be reconciling every month on a schedule by a deadline that helps all of us know when to get our invoices in, and you don't want to be posting something in November that should have been posted back to September, because that affects all of your end-of-month balances. So we do have, internally, we have cleaned up that system and schedule. So we are reconciled shortly after the 15th of each month so that we have time to prepare. I run those reports, after each reconciliation, and I have saved them. As Ryan mentioned, if we have to backdate any entries, even if it's back to December 31st of 2020, that has a cascade effect then on every end-of-month balance to today. And I would want to take that time then to rerun an updated report so that we know where we were at the end of each month. And that's where my hesitation is to, I can run a report if there's entries that have to be backed in to the correct year, and maybe they won't, we will rely very heavily on our auditors to help us understand what's allowed and what isn't. That can affect every month that happens after that entry is made. And I want to make sure that what I hand you, that I'm confident is up to date and reflects where we actually are right then with that reconciliation.
Amy, in the future, so in the future, Amy, that we can expect to have a report on the second meeting of the month?
Yes, we will include that with your packet, likely just as an attachment as your monthly reports. That'll be available to you and to any member of the public or visitor from another community or someone that wants to look, can pull that up and we'll be able to view those reports along with you at the same time that your agendas are published.
Sounds
I
good.
mean, I think it's a good suggestion, and I think that I had mentioned it earlier, but once we do have the approved upon levy dollar amount, to have some type of infographic, that would be a good talking piece to the general public if they were to have questions about where these individual pieces are going.
Yes.
I think being able to like visualize that, because I think so far what we've seen in the budget has made a lot of sense, but it would be really nice to be able to have that holistically put into something that's easy to read for the general public, so they know that these dollars aren't being wasteful, and that we
Yes.
are doing what is necessary to move forward and keep the city running.
Yes, you had sent me an example actually of a graphic that I thought was really nice. We talked at staff level today about how we could illustrate if you had $1, how is that split between, how is that levy then split between our departments, and show within each department what levy is going, maybe it's the pool, maybe it's the arena. We want to be able to show you that in graphs, in graphics, that's easy for anyone to understand. All of us take and digest information differently. Some people like written, some people like a graph and a chart, and so we're going to try to produce that in a way that hopefully reaches everyone, and is something that anyone could pick up and look at and follow, or ask us a question if they have one, and we will plan to include those as part of our truth and taxation
But
hearing
even
as well.
more so, like Steve is saying, they'd like to have that. You can tell me that 13 cents goes to police, then 18 cents. What was it last year? You know, what went up? Is it costing us more for our law enforcement? Is it costing us more? Well, look at our IT. And then you can explain some things. I guess we're all looking for the same final product.
Right,
And it makes it just that much clearer for John Q. public to look at it and not have to just go, wow, I don't know. I
Right.
mean, you know, you want to have an
Yes.
idea of where you're being, you know, a good fiduciary.
yes, and this is a lot of information to digest if you're just trying to look and sort through it, and we plan to be creative about how we will present that and then make that available. Even after our truth and taxation hearing, we'll have that on our
I think even
website.
being able to go live now where people, you know, in the 7 years I've been on here, nobody's ever showed up for truth and taxation, ever. So, I mean, it's one of those things, if you go live and you have the stuff that you're talking about, explaining that.
Yeah.
And you have a highlights of why we had to do a new car, we had to do this, we had to do that. I mean, that's reality for a lot of people, but I agree with Wayne, everybody, and what he said, everybody digests it different.
Yeah.
And so if you can have it in many formats to say the same thing, to get it out to the public or whatever, and truth and taxation, now that you're live with this, I think would be a good time to be able to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Well, I also think now that it's being recorded, we can always reference back to it instead of trying to explain, just so that the information is consistently provided the most accurate way, instead of us trying to remember what maybe something was said.
So-
I also agree that, like with the actuals, once we do come to that, a comparison from year to year would be helpful
Yes.
to actually have an actual number, not what the 4% was and
Right.
was not maybe abided by.
Right, totally agree.
And I want to also say, you know, Amy and I are using our software, and that's what I want to use for reporting purposes. Because too often times you get these spreadsheets, and a lot of spreadsheets, it was just keyed numbers into a spreadsheet. Well, anytime there's a change, you gotta go back to the spreadsheet and update it and do these things. So we're working to get our software to print these financial reports for you guys, that this is it. These numbers are the real numbers.
So the challenges that you're having now, is it just research?
It is,
Or is
that's.
it data entry?
Right now, really, before we can present that full set of entries to you for your consideration, is just that exploration and research of that. There was I don't have the exact number, 400,000 deficit in our airport reserves. And we just need to understand why, and if there should have been a transfer made from a designated spot, that we're in fact doing that and not just pumping general fund reserves in and those things. So that's,
So also in the past, has it been like, why you've been like several months behind? Is it because you haven't been getting the information? Has it been because the data hasn't been entered in a timely
What-
manner? And
what
what
I
has been
believe I understood when I came, prior administration and finance director did not make the schedule of that bank reconciliation scheduled priority. Where I came from, we had a meeting that it went out on every month, and we had a staff, we had deadlines, we reconciled by a certain date each month. And when we started to close that in, and it took us a few months to get that down and get that right, it was really just a matter of determining this is a priority and this is the schedule we need. So that every month, one, you want to make sure we're not presenting reports to you that haven't been reconciled yet, in case something comes up on the bank accounts or the bills and things that aren't reconciled, and then journal entries are made. So it was really just a matter of scheduling that and setting it as a priority and part of our monthly routine, if you will. That's my best take on it anyway.
I think it's been 5-6 years since we've had an adequate, report. I mean, isn't there a statute or something that says they need to have something out by a certain date?
I don't know the answer.
know,
I don't know that there's a statute that says staff should run a report by a certain date. I don't know that, but
Or as far as
practically,
accounting-wise, but, like I
Best
said,
practices.
it's been many, many, many years.
Well, it sounds like we're moving towards that.
yes.
Yes.
And as soon as we get these entries ready, we are ready. If those entries are approved and we get them all ready and they're approved on the 13th, we're ready to have a monthly report packet in your second December meeting.
Yep.
Really. Internally, we are ready and already on schedule to do that. So it's just, I want to make sure that if entries have to be backed in to a prior year, that what we're handing you
I'm
is,
kind of like what Wayne says, if we can somehow, I mean, if you can have it by a certain date before we have to approve the levy, that would be, I think, something we'd all would like to see.
I don't want to promise, but I think we can make that happen. Ryan? He's nodding at me? Okay.
He already looks tired.
He's probably,
I think anybody that would have time to go into your office and look at it, and I don't care, leave the paper there, but this is, do your due diligence and say, all right, this is where we are. I mean, 20 minutes, you can look at that thing and have a pretty good idea where you work, and,
and you're wanting to see 2020?
right, well, yeah, up to date to 2020, I mean,
Today,
if- or up
you want to
date
see
for
end of year 2020 and year to date?
No, for last year to this year.
21.
A comparison?
Yeah, well, I just wanna see the actuals, put it that way. The actuals for what we spent so far in
Okay,
2021.
not 2020.
Well, I have that at home. What we had for 2020. And so what we spent there with that, I mean, if you look on the line items, when she did it, we had a printout of, okay, this was how much she had. This is where we are as of whatever. But the problem was, it was 4 months behind
Yeah,
information.
exactly. And it was a
So-
spreadsheet, so you really,
So you would have to do the math from
Well-
the next 4 months to go back to add on to that to see if you're even
precisely.
close. Yeah.
Yes, that was precisely the problem. I had planned to, as we mentioned, use our Tyler Encode financial software, and I can print you where you can see each fund. I can print it as a summary for you, So you're not having to dig through hundreds of, if you print the whole entire budget, you're getting a lot of pages. And then if you want to dig down in more, you let us know and we'll print it for you. I welcome any of you at any time. I encourage you to. Steve, I will print it and then you let me know when you want to come in.
Like I said, I have no trouble leaving it on your desk for the next person to go look at.
Right.
I don't want a copy of it, I just want, to say, all right, here we are. So I can say, all right, 8%, yeah, that makes sense to me. This is why, what's what we used last year? Well, we ran a deficit in this field for 4 years, and nobody in the council knew that. And we can only make decisions on information that's given to us, and if you're not got the right information, you're making an educated guess. And that's not fair to the taxpayers or anybody, and that's why I'm glad you are working on what you're doing. And like I said, I would like to see that before we vote on this, is all I'm saying at the end of the day.
But also to understand that the budget this year, it has been pretty itemized from what we've seen so far and what needs to happen, and that there is a significant increase because there's been a lot of infrastructure that has fallen off the walls and has been quite shoddy. And I think we need to also keep that in mind as well, in the increase in the levy.
Yes, there are things that you are seeing in your 2022 budget that you're not going to see in prior year budgets, certainly.
Right.
Thank you, Ryan. I think I'm gonna go ahead and have Chad put my next slide up. Chad, I accidentally pointed the laser in his eye earlier, so I'm only gonna point this at the wall, so I don't, okay, so he's fine, okay. And I am gonna walk over just so, I wanna talk through this chart again, but I wanna make sure that if anyone is tuning in and is not here with us, that they're clear about what section I'm talking about. But I'm gonna take my paper with me. Chad, I'm glad you're okay. Okay, this is the same chart that we have been looking at each of our budget meetings. I'm gonna take us back a little bit and then we'll talk about where we are today. The very first budget that we presented to you, at the end of the discussion, I let you know we were at 12%. And that's the column you see on the far right. At our meeting where we set our maximum preliminary levy, we set it at 10%, and at that time, we had our blue box was around the 10% column. What you have in front of you today, and the budget form we just looked at, up here on the screen, showed an 8%. First, I want to start by saying the numbers on this document are estimates. It says it at the top, but it's kind of small. So when someone gets their tax bill, it's not in fact going to show that exact number. So this is for illustration purposes that we estimated. What I want to talk through, let's just talk about how the chart works, and then we'll go through it. We're here on our 8%. Estimated, if we looked at, let's say $150,000 home, and I'm sorry, our county asked us to refer to that as a residential homestead, there in blue. At $150,000, your estimated tax bill would be about $777. That equates to about $65 a month if you wanted to look at it in that way. If you come down here, and we're right here again on 150,000, and this amount would be an increase over a 4% levy. So here's 4%. If the levy is set at 8%, a $150,000 home has an annual increase over a 4% levy of about $34. That's about $3 per month increase over a 4% levy. And I chose 4%. I didn't show you 3 because I ran out of room. 4 seemed to be pretty typical, 4 and 5. I didn't see very many 5s in the history, so I've heard people talk about that, but you must be going way back because I've seen 3s and 4s. But if we set at a 4% levy, this amount down here in your second column shows the increase over that amount. So realistically, we weren't going to be below 4%. I feel safe in saying that. That's why we chose that. So let's move down here. We're still in the 8% column. Let's look at a $200,000 commercial dolly. If you'll remember, this is in blue. We did have a correction to our calculation. The county verified it. It actually dropped our numbers here by about $500. So, on a $200,000 commercial property at 8%, annual tax bill is about $2,000. That equates to about $167 a month. And if you come down here, the increase over a 4% levy on a $200,000 commercial property annually, increased over 4%, is about $86. That equates to about $7 per month if you broke it out in that way. When we talk about percentages, that is meaningful to those of us that deal with this, but it's also important to talk about what that means. I'm a homeowner. These affect me also. So at 8% on my home, I am looking at about, let's say, a $34 increase if we had set it at 4%. It is important for us as staff and as elected officials and appointed officials to be able to explain to our public what those dollars are doing also. They are providing our police and fire service. I would pay, what would my annual be? $65 a month at 8%. I would pay that just for fire and police service. Myself. That's myself. That's how I value that. It also covers some of our public works. That includes our snow plowing and our tree trimming. It includes our parks and recreation. That's our arena. We do subsidize our arena with tax dollars. We do subsidize our community pool with tax dollars. Those are things that our community appreciates, I think. I want to make sure we are offering those services with quality and that we're thinking about our programs, and we are going to do that. We're going to be looking at rates. We're having staff discussions now. We have to get through this budget, and we need to talk about and analyze rates. That means utility rates. That means some of our user fees. Are they appropriately set? Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe we need to look at small steps or look at programs. Are they being utilized? If they're not, how much is it costing us? Those types of things. And again, to remember that your levy dollars come from your general fund, your Parks and Rec fund, your library, and your airport. So those are your four funds that your levy dollars, that's how we calculate them, and that's what they go back into. I think it's important. This is kind of a tough sheet to understand. I tried to put information in front of you that was useful, but I wanted to walk through it again. Do you have any questions or feedback for me on this in particular? No. As I walk back to my seat, I want you to be thinking about what I really need to ask of you tonight is I need a consensus on where we are. There's a lot of work still left to do at staff level in preparing information for our truth and taxation hearing. We have to prepare to file our finalized levy. It would be helpful to get a consensus from you this evening if we can move forward at 8%, and if not, I ask that you give me specific direction on what you need me to do, because we don't have a lot of meetings left to continue to come back and kind of volley ideas back and forth. We got to get some work started so that we can provide the adequate truth and taxation hearing that our public deserves and meet our filing deadlines with the county and state. So if you'll think about that a little bit as I walk back, then I might toss it over to the mayor or whatever, but if we could just, I'd like to get some feedback from you and get a consensus on where we are tonight.
I guess for me, I'm good. I know Amy and her staff has put in a lot of work to this, and I think she feels that the 8% is the minimum that we can go. And I mean, I'd like to see what we've all been asking for before we make the final decision on moving forward with the 8%. So I guess for me, I'm good with you working on the 8% levy.
I'm okay with that also.
How much does one levy bring us in?
Well, a 1% change over last year, I'm gonna verify this, but I looked at it today, I believe it's $23,220 will affect, about a 1% change from your 2021 certified levy.
Okay,
That's a,
23,000?
I think it's 23,220. I will,
So I mean, we still, if we want to go down more, we still have that money that's sitting in the cheetah fund that nobody seems to want to move over to here to help us with this. So I mean, I'm still in favor of doing that. I mean, we have to keep it at where it's at, but we have to, if we go down, we have to get the money somewhere.
I do wanna toss in again, that would be a one-time
Right.
boost. So just keep in mind, if we offset, some kind of ongoing operations, let's say general fund, because it's our biggest, next year, that expense doesn't go away, and may impact where we are next year, depending on how
I
that's
think
used.
over the years we've done what you're talking about. It's a one-time fix and it's still back there the next year.
Coming
Right.
back at you.
So I mean, when we start talking about getting down from 8%, the money's got, in my mind, the money's got to come from somewhere. So if somebody says, I want to go down to 7%, well, I don't think the city staff can cut anymore from where what they've done. So then my answer is then, well, let's take it from some of this other places just to get us by. So if, I'm not saying I necessarily want to do that, but I don't think we can just to say, you know, I want to get it down to this and just because, you know, we have to come up with some other alternative means of where the money's going to come from, right? Am I wrong on that, or?
Well, in the years past too, just to balance the budget, we've always pulled in from reserves.
And
Right.
we do have a little bit of that this year. And we have a healthy general fund reserve, but
How
we
much is
still.
in there?
Right now,
Yeah.
Tom, I think we're at about,
But I don't li-
I hesitate to even.
I don't like that idea neither.
Well, and let me say, again, I can tell you that amount, but I know there's entries that have to be made to it.
Okay.
It's gonna-
I
Well,
think,
with you
I'm just
anyway.
looking, okay, you got it 8%. I'm not, I don't want 8%, I want 7. If we're looking at 23,000 to get it down one more levy, I think we should be able to find that either out of general reserve or someplace, to get it down to 7.
Well, I'm at the 8%, I don't like seeing taxes go up either, but, it seems like we're coming each year that we're in the hole or
Well,
something or
yeah,
other,
but,
we're
we-
taking
we've
from the
been-
general
we've been-
fund.
We've been hearing all along that our numbers and stuff weren't accurate and this and that, and next year they're supposed to be so much better, things are being worked out better. So next year we should be fine. So that's what I say, if you say this is.
could I interject? I did not make that promise to you. I have said to you that I hope the majority of our corrections can be done in 2023, but that doesn't mean in 2022, that doesn't mean in 2023 you're riding at a 3% levy.
I didn't say that.
If your prior budgets have not accurately reflected actual expenses, that doesn't just go away when we're showing it to you now. And if there is in fact an increase in natural gas prices, materials, fuel, that also may have an impact. So I just want.
I think, Amy, in your professional opinion, and with the staff that we are relying on to be the professionals that understand and know this, and you're feeling that 8% is where we need to be, I would say 8%. I am concerned that we're more worried about 7% versus the infrastructure and the things that us going to a lower percentage, but then also in the long run, it costing us more money because the maintenance hasn't been done on things that needed it to be done, because we're more worried about having a lower levy than actually taking care of the things that we have. And so I think that needs to be considered. Yes, the percentage is important, but also making sure that we are being fiscally responsible. And sometimes being fiscally responsible means that we are purchasing and maintaining the things we have appropriately, and sometimes that costs more. And I think that the frustration that I'm hearing here is that you have not had the most accurate information in making your decisions in the past. And I hope from this point going forward, from what I'm hearing in the research that you're doing and the things that you're doing to help us get back on track, that we're able to consider that.
You know, your 1%, Tom, you're looking at about $8 to $9 on a $150,000 home.
Yeah.
I think rather than do that, me as a taxpayer, I would say, hey, let's get ourselves back to where we're thinking we're at square one. We're kind of getting back in the ballpark. And then maybe next year you're back to your 3 to 4 or 5%.
I don't think you're ever gonna get
But-
back down to 3 and 4.
But I don't see why you're standing so tall on the 7. 7 doesn't sound much better to me than 8. I mean, you know, if you're talking tax,
that's not
no, the increase.
And the public's asking for more too.
Yeah, they
want better things.
You gotta remember,
stuff
we
like-
added that swimming pool, and that was quite a bit.
Well, let's not get into that. I
Yeah.
think that was a good idea.
Yeah,
either.
well,
We got Duke on that too.
Yeah.
So do we need a vote,
I look
general
at-
consensus?
The
Um,
thing with this is
Doing it.
the information that we got, I think is more current and better than we've ever had in 7 years I've been sitting here. And I'm gonna put faith in you and your staff that that's what you did. But I, you know, like I said, when we get this adjusted, and we get to see the numbers and roll onto that, I just look at, in the long term though, you know, why we need to put a package together, all our high-end things, and bond for it, instead of having these big things. I know we have multiple things
And
we can put on that list. Bonding's cheap, it's cheapest money you're gonna find, and we've been pretty successful as a city being debt-free. And I think we gotta stick our necks out a little bit and get all our projects in a bundle and bond for these things, instead of throwing this on taxpayers every year of going up. And
I don't
isn't
disagree
that
with
what she's
that, but
saying?
I can't give you a proposal for a bond if we haven't evaluated. The other thing is, we are planning to do that as early in '22 as possible, so that we can understand what a bond package might look like, work with financial advisors, understand what an annual payment would look like, and then present that to you as part of a whole package, including impact on 2023 budget.
A bond doesn't come for free either.
No, and it
No.
doesn't take the
No.
place of your operating expenses, so.
But at
The
the
last
end of the
time-
day, we have, like I said, we've let our stuff go, and, you know, I'd like to see 7 too, but, you know, if it's calling for 8, you did your due diligence, I agree with that, I'm not gonna argue that. But at the end of the day, when we get into next year's budget, that we have, everybody sitting here has the information to make these decisions. I mean, we're kinda going blind on this, if you ask me, and that's just my opinion, on the numbers that we can see. And to me, it's like, we need to strive going into 2022 and 23 to have the great numbers and great information, so the next councils behind us don't get in the same predicament I am sitting here, because I was duped. I mean, it's like,
And I have already made that commitment publicly multiple times, even within this meeting. That is that's the best that I can do for you tonight, is commit to you. Internally, our process is already happening. As soon as we can get those entries before you that you as a council must approve, I can present that to you. I'm hoping that you will have that, and every member of the public of any community with internet access can pull it up and look at it. I can't do that for you today. I've committed to you that that's our plan. Internally, we are ready. Our auditors are gonna be here this week. I've committed it publicly, probably 4 times in this meeting, and that is the best that I can do. We can continue to talk about it, but I can't fix it today for you.
So one question, to meet that challenge, would it be a staffing? I mean, do you need to bring in more staff to make that commitment?
Our auditors are coming in this week, and that should help us. They have helped us write some of those, and I think our finance director and our accountant have been working on it. And I don't think that's an unreasonable time frame for us to have that before you.
But I mean, like going forward and meet that month commitment every time, do you have enough staff
We
to make
do.
that? Okay.
We do, and yeah, I think so.
Once you get it set up, it starts to
Right.
fall in place.
Right.
I think it's just getting the setup part that's been,
So consensus is 8%?
yes.
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 8 with the thought of, we'll look at her information, and if we can get it done, we would get down.
I am confident in telling you the information I can provide you in a year-to-date report. I've looked at them. Our finance director has looked at them. Every single one of your department heads has looked at them over and over from May through today. I don't think there's anything that we have not seen that's gonna jump out and say, we over budgeted, because there's just things that I don't think were addressed in that budget. It'll help us see where we are.
I think it's more seeing where we're lacking, you know, honestly, it's like I said, the lawyer one is the killer for me, I mean, for all them years going unnoticed, from the people who sat in these chairs, and let that go of a 30-40% deficit is very irresponsible, I mean, it's one of those things, that's why I'm really nervous to say, you know what, I'm gonna stick my neck out and say 8% is great, but I don't have all this information that we should have to make this decision, is what I'm saying.
But the actuals from last year aren't gonna, is not
It
what
makes a huge
this
difference.
budget
It's not
is
a budget.
predicated.
It makes a huge difference.
And some of these budgets, let me just say, we went through them initially, and trimmed fat, if you will. There's a lot of, parks and recreation activities within that fund. And we looked at, if there was a $500 line that hadn't been used, maybe we cut it to 100. There are reductions that were made that offset some of the increases that we felt were necessary to put before you. This was a very complex and chaotic process. I understand your frustration. I have felt that myself. Our staff has felt that as well. I can't do any better than fixing it going forward for us. I inherited some of the budget spreadsheets, and we had to understand how those were used and then modify them a little bit to try to present it in a more understandable way for you. This was a long process. I never want to go through a budget cycle like this again either.
I guess the part that kinda, you know, we all sit and we talk about we can't keep taking out of reserves, but it seems like every year when we do our audit, our reserves are healthy as could be.
There are,
And we keep taking out them every year, but every year they're still healthy as can be.
Yeah, but then the thing is, what happens if, 1 year the LGA
Well,
doesn't pay out?
the reason that there's being healthy is we're not spending what we say we're budgeting for.
State of
So,
Minnesota.
and that's why they're increasing.
you do
So I
want
don't-
to, you do want to have reserves.
Yeah, I'm not saying not to have any, but there always seems to be plenty healthy. And it's, that's why I say, we're looking at $23,000 to try and get it down to 7. I think that should be doable. I know, you know, you look at it, what it is a monthly, okay, for you or for me, it might not be a big deal, but for somebody else, it could be every month. And then you're not talking just that, you're talking, okay, their fuel prices, their grocery prices, all this stuff counts.
But as you're saying,
Yeah.
it costs more for us to run the city too,
Right.
so.
But if our reserves are staying at a healthy rate,
Well, the other thing with the reserves though, you gotta remember, we got a pretty big project coming up here with these streets and sidewalks and,
Yeah.
and
Look at the
that's gonna probably eat some of that up pretty quick,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
And if we have to make a $300 to $400 transfer from general fund to offset airport, we have about 65,000 allocated for our share of the corridor study consultant. I think we have about 19,000 allocated for the Reels project at the airport. And I've also included a 290,000 potential pull for 2022 budget. That does add up.
Big cut.
Now, that's not all at once, and some of those transfers haven't come before you yet for consideration, but for me, I need to be tracking what we've allocated.
It's a lot of work, Amy, to put out, I know we've gone through it 100 times, but, you know, so I can explain to the taxpayers that this is what we're doing, you know, all the things that we have. You probably have it in a spreadsheet or something, all the additions to the 2022 budget. Do you have something like that, or is that not really doable?
I don't have that in like a spreadsheet form just because we've been working through, I don't have a list really, but I could
You
go,
can see it on this, what you have on there with the numbers of what is it, where did 290,000 go would be easy to explain than say, yeah, that 290,000 went up in Parks and Rec, you know, and like I said, we hashed this over a million times, we should probably have it down, but, I don't want, you know, we got enough on your plate, but I just wonder if there was an easy way to
I will look back. I
address
know
those things.
I've got my notes from the budget meetings that we've had. I can look and see. I'll have to,
And like I said, if it's a tough one, I just thought if you
Dig 'em
had
out.
something easy to do it, but
okay,
easy to
I will,
explain to somebody that why you've got an increase in the budget of 290,000 if you have a list of what it is. And most of it, we should know or whatever, but a lot of it, you know, it's not written in there
right.
and kind of under the books or whatever.
I'll see what I've got, and in what format, and see if we can put something together, or a memo
Even
even.
the truth in taxation, to have that information to say, you know, this is why, I mean, it's reality that, and we think we all agree here that we cannot let all our buildings and grounds and go down the tubes and then have to fix them back up. I mean, you know,
Right.
maintenance is everything on that, and maintenance is expensive, and it's part of, if you were gonna have all these buildings, you gotta keep them up, and that's part of
Right.
the thing too.
I mean, I'd also like to say, just for the truth and taxation, I think something similar to what you did with us initially with all the budgets and kind of went through it by department was very helpful.
Okay.
And so I think that if we could do something similar to that with just the budget breakdowns for what is now in the budget, I think
Okay.
would be very helpful, because then it would be recorded, and then
Yeah.
if you do have a question, Steve, you can send them straight to that video.
That's-
Because it'll be very clear and it'll be documented there
And
publicly.
that would be a good place, as we put that together, to document, maybe highlight some of the changes that we're seeing reflected in those budgets over years past. That would be a good place to show that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready, Mary? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. 8% then, consensus.
That, thank you for
All right.
getting through that. We will start working on,
Thank you,
Documents,
everyone.
yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
staff, for your patience.